running out of time. So I'm gonna take over for a bit, so Leslie can take a break. So my name is Iman, and yes, you're here. Okay, so we're gonna start from your question about how these females, whether they consider themselves as foreign.
Whether they consider themselves as black or colored before women, or if it's opposite.
Yes. So, you want to say it first? Okay, so you take first and then you do it.
I'm not that fond of defining myself because someone is asking me to define myself. And I also, for me, I define with a lot of different identities. So I might be in one setting where, I mean, being a woman, or being black, or being a mom, or being a professional, or being a student, or being a lesbian will be in focus for me. So in that way, I cannot give you an answer of which identity that I define myself by.
I think that's definitely a very difficult question to answer, and neither are things that we choose, so it's not really a matter of identifying as much as explaining yourself a certain way. And I guess for me, I think black actually comes first, which I wouldn't expect for myself, but maybe it's also quite literally from just English grammar, that when I would write what I am, or if someone were to say what I am, she's a black girl, not a girl black. So I think that might have an influence on it as well.
I think actually I have quite an opposite experience from you, Janava, because I think that I find my identities, and I also identify with a lot of different things, but I find them very complex and very sucked together in a way that I can't separate them from one another. I am a woman of color, I am queer, I'm from a working class family, and usually I experience a lot that in different situations people want me to separate this. Are you a woman, or are you this, or are you that? And I can't do that. I find it very difficult at least to do that because I think identity is much more complex than just one thing. I think it's layers and experiences that you have, and my experiences are only about being a woman. It's about being a woman of color, and also being queer, and also being working class in a very classist society. So it's kind of the opposite from you, Janava.
Really brief. It depends on which arena I'm in. If I go into a boys' locker room, I'm a woman. But if every time, no. Whereas if I'm in a room where I can, actually a really good example. I started my master's this week, and I'm the only girl with an ethnic background. And I noticed it right away when I came into the room. I was like, wow, I'm the only one who's colored. And that's where I realized that, okay, that's the first thing I'm thinking about. Whereas, with the locker room, it's the gender.
I think for me, growing up, I always identified myself as a girl first, or a woman first, but then realizing that society is not always, welcoming to me being a woman first. They always want to sort of say, oh, but you're African, or oh, you are Rwandan, oh, but you have progressed so well, oh, you do this so well, oh, you have managed to speak Danish, or you work, so because, stuff like that. So because they put my color and the color of my skin first, so I started, this has been an internalized part of me as well now. So I started with, I'm African, I'm Rwandan, I'm black, and then woman comes forth. So that's it.
Yeah, just like you said, you live in a society, especially growing up in Denmark, this kind of this, your color is definitely gonna mean something, and people are gonna notice your color, and even though sometimes they try not to, and it's very awkward when they're when people are just trying to be like really over passive about it. But but yeah, I definitely define myself as black, and I think it was because I saw this very funny post on Facebook once when I was in my mother's room. My father is also black, if you can't tell, but she did not know if I was going to be a boy or a girl, but she knew that I was going to be black. So.
I would like to say that I identify as a woman first, but I also have to say that with my meetings with people, people ask me a lot, hvor du fra? Where are you from? That's like the first thing people ask me when they meet me, usually. So they don't ask, are you a woman? They ask me because they can see that. When I'm out and about, I think I would like to maybe sometimes forget that I'm black, but I'm not really getting that opportunity. So I'm actually surprised to give this answer to you that I identify as black, mostly. So yeah, that's actually, I didn't think that I would say that, but yeah, I just changed my mind.
So on to the next question. In Denmark and many other countries around the world, it's often the women who progress and integrate much faster than the men in immigrant and communities of color. How do we explain this within the double burden definition? And why are women, despite their nationality or color, actually faring much better than their male counterparts? And how can this be utilized for general mobility of all? So who would take that first?
I would say that it has, for me, when I saw the question, I just sort of immediately said it has to do with the work that is offered when foreign people come to Europe and in Denmark or in other European countries. I'm a mother of a nurse. My mother is actually here, and I think it was easy because I think the work that she does. I would think that for men it's mostly female work, or it's easy for the women to get an education or to get another education, and that way they will be able to support themselves and support their families. Where males, I have experience. For instance, I've been in Belgium because Rwanda used to be a former Belgian colony, and many men they came there with the high educations, but they couldn't find work within their lines or within their education. They were sort of many times forced to work with labor work and change their careers or change their work areas, and for them it was a big blow. So instead of some of them, it took them a long time before actually accepting that that's the way I'm going to support my family. When women accepted that, okay, this is where I am, I have to start all over, and they actually did that. And for men, it meant that they were behind, work-wise, income-wise, and language-wise. So that's, for me, I think that workforce and what it offers, it plays a very major role.
To that question, and also referring to like the thing that you said, like the system that like manifests itself but suppresses, I call that white supremacy. And that's not to offend anybody. I don't believe that everybody is a white supremacist, but we do live in a global system called white supremacy, and that was created during colonialism, and we see that through economics and a lot of different things. And it's very obvious if you like can understand like the world pre like Christopher Columbus or the disaster, but but I think like what you have to be very real about is that, okay, so what do you do when you come to conquer something? You take away the warrior. Who is most general? The warrior, that is the male. So in Africa for 500 years, we did not have a system where a father woke up and went to a job, because if he did that, he might be kidnapped, and you never saw the father again. That happened systematically for 500 years. So that, I mean, like that whole, like that, it's just like, for me, being such an African nerd and very pro-black, it's just like, that's just like one of those questions where it's just like, yeah, it was 500 years. Like, and I also think it's about that, the propaganda and like the stigmas that were put on men of color, and like, it's just like, it's kind of uncomfortable to see like a person of color in a dominant position. Like, I think, like, I've heard so many times, oh my God, do you have doctors in Ivory Coast? And when I show them, like, I mean, Abidjan is very well developed. Like, the first time I saw skyscrapers was when I was in Ivory Coast. I had never seen a skyscraper before I went to Africa. And I mean, like, when I remember that I showed that to my friend, and he was like, what? I thought Africa was little camps, and why do you have skyscrapers? And you know, that is the thing, like, there is so much propaganda to see the colored man as a thug, or as a drug dealer, or as the rapist, or something else. So it's so systematic, and because our brain is an associating mechanism, it becomes awkward, it becomes bizarre when you see, like, I mean, imagine like 15 years ago, like, there are so many black comedians, Richard Pryor, like Chris Rock, and like Eddie Murphy. I think he also did it in Delirious, where he makes the black president joke. I don't know if any of you have seen all these old comedy shows, but it's so, like, at that time it was so funny. Would you imagine like there would actually be a colored man as the most powerful man on this planet in such a short time? I mean, that's freaking amazing.
Thank you, Sarah. I would give a more sort of a practical answer, because I also worked with it when I was studying my thesis or studying my master to this problematic. And it's a very practical issue. Majority of people who immigrate, sort of refugees, have a fixed labor division where the man works outside and the woman sort of takes the part in sort of the domestic work. So it's inside-outside work. So when they sort of migrate to another country, the man, it takes a while for him to sort of get his confidence, and because he needs to get a job, learn the language, educate himself, where the woman is sort of still in this very, very safe comfort of taking care of the house, cleaning the house, taking care of the children. And I guess that kind of gives her some sort of an energy, because she doesn't lose her identity. And that's why she can maybe integrate better. I've worked with it in a refugee camp level, so maybe it's a bit different in sort of migrating to a country like Denmark. But I guess that would be sort of an answer.
Yeah, just I think both Sarah and Hodan's points are very important, and I also think that because it's also important to see how, if we talk about Denmark, so we also have to take into account how racism is at work in Denmark, and how what we see is often that the Muslim guy, young man, is taken out and shown out, you know, as evil, as lazy, as potential terrorist. Even the whole discourse around terrorism is a lot, that image, the images that it carries is about men and not about women. So I think that within that environment, and I know this also from kind of remembering how it was for my father here, trying to get a job within this society that for him, what we know of Denmark outside is kind of the equality country, the freedom country, the peace country, right? And you get into a place that is actually does not correspond with the reality, right? And you see how, so it is a blow, And I would say that in many, many ways, in the public sphere, this is targeted towards men. So that is also part of what influences this.
Actually, this is something that I've worked with in my job as a journalist, trying to get an answer to why women of color are more prominent in the higher education than their male counterparts. And, well, actually, there's another thing. Women of color are not only faring better than their male counterparts, they're also faring better than the women of Danish descent currently. And I'm talking about women born in Denmark by non-Western immigrant parents. And why is that, you ask? And I think that the reason is a combination of two things. One is high expectations from the women's home and parents and society as a whole, and also I think the second part is that it's a means of securing a truly independent life as a woman of color. And I think that they use it as a way to be equal with the men. So it's a part in greater gender equality. But with the male counterparts lagging behind, there's a real risk of an education gap between the genders, the sexes. And I believe that in order for men to keep up with women, they need to have the same sort of drive, the same sort of motivation to become a part of society and to gain an important role also in the marriage or in the families. And I don't have an answer to that, but I think that's what they need to do. Yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, because we're still running out of time, but I'm gonna add one more comment and then we're gonna wrap this question up, even though it's so good.
We only have 15 more minutes, so yeah.
I think it could be partially an answer to the question that you posed, and part of the original question was this concept of a double burden. For you guys that might not know, basically this idea of a burden is the further that you stray from the concept of white male, that after that it's another added pressure from society. So once you're a female, that's one burden. A female of color, that's another burden. Female that's queer of color, another burden. So the question was, how does this double burden maybe help us to immigrate? And the thing is, when you are so different from society, you have to figure out how you can get into that society. So you're very hyper aware of how that society works. So you find out very quickly of how to navigate it. And I think when you're a woman in a room full of men, you know you're a woman in a room full of men. If you're a black woman in a room full of white men, that's another way that you are very, very, very aware of your surroundings. And once you pay attention, it's easier for you to figure out how it is to get in there and how it is that, okay, these are their standards, and as a black woman, if I'm going to go to school, I got to do it right. And then you start climbing a little bit higher because you have a little bit more. I think that is a very strong explanation of, or reason of how it happens. And basically, if you're the new kid at school, you're not usually the loudest. And maybe next week you have a lot of friends, but when you first come in, you're you observe. And when you have, the more burdens you have, the more different you are than the norm, you observe stronger. And I think that's how you start making your way to climb in that society faster.
Okay, we only have like 10 minutes left now. And there are just a few things I want to make sure I say to you all before we leave tonight. One of the things I'd like to say is, according to Facebook, there are over 700 people attending this event. And that just points to the great desire amongst the populace for functions such as this. So please send us your email via the event site, contact the African Empowerment Center, let us know you want to be on a mailing list so we can include you in our future events because this dialogue will certainly continue. Don't expect it to be, I mean, it went pretty well, but it definitely won't have as many glitches next time around. One of the things I feel compelled to share with you all, I'm a history buff. I love history or her story or however way you want to say it. And one of the most interesting things I've come upon in my researching and reading was pre-Christian Europe. Because I found out that for about 300-400 years, Europe killed a lot of women. A lot of women. They killed so many women that there were towns in Germany where there weren't any females left. 400 years of killing women in Europe. And I say this because the system that's in place around the world, it had to start somewhere. And it started here. And it started with the people in this landmass that we refer to as Europe. And what was it that they erased from our memories? They erased the fact that there were powerful women in Europe. There were healers, educators, spiritualists, herbalists, who were they were equal with men, whether they fought or they healed or they taught. And something came on the horizon, just like people who talk about colonialism, our reference is Christopher Columbus. So I ask you, who's your Christopher Columbus? Who came in the name of the cross and got rid of all the powerful women? And when I say powerful, I don't mean, today we don't even, any woman who lives in the West don't have an idea about how powerful we were before this power system took place. Like, don't even pretend and think you know. I suggest you go back to history. And not the history or her story that they teach you in the textbooks, because that's the biggest problem. Too many people are trusting of the dominant narrative. And this is the biggest problem when people from different backgrounds come together, because there are a lot of people walking around thinking they know what happened. And what they really need to do is listen to other people's stories and understand each other better. So I am going to wrap this up. Maybe give the audience one more chance to say something. Padis, do you have anything to say? Is there anyone who'd like to? I gotta get someone in the back. The people in the back they've been neglected. Can you talk? Can you? Yeah, go ahead. Can you speak?
I always speak. It's fine, no problem. Hi.
Last question. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add a comment to this last final discussion about. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I speak up. About this whole. What's the reason that young women of visible minority background are doing so much better than young men with visible minority status? Because even though we had a lot of really good responses to why that is, I feel like there was a neglect of one of the really important issues behind that, which is we have a system, a white supremacist patriarchal system, which strongly supports this white savior complex that we are saving women from oppression by putting them in jobs. And that we do not need men in those jobs because they are a threat, because they are dangerous, because they are not.
Good point. Thank you for coming. I'd wrap up now. It's better to wrap up too early than too late. Please send us your email on the event site if you would like to stay in the news. And we've got the sister from Aalborg. Is it Aarhus? Albertslund. All right. She should have been on the panel. Hold on.
Please. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I'm 47.
What?
Yes. I've got 3 grandchildren. I've got 3 sons, and I've got a daughter. I have to tell you this because it's a whole room full of women.
Yes.
Please. I think a thing that has been not neglected here about why the the ethnic women are doing so well is try to go to a nightclub in Copenhagen. It is full of our boys and our men. So I am telling you, it is so important for you as mothers or mothers to be. Please, what happens is the girls are kept at home to take care of her virginity. And then the boys, as soon as he can get an identity card from his brother when he's 16 or 17, he sneaks into a discotheque. That's where they are, and they're also from Thursday until Sunday. And on the other days, they're out. So I need you to woman up and get a hold of those boys and get them in and stand on a chair when they get taller than you and say, do your homework. Do your homework. Do your homework. And that is why, when the girls are at home, they're doing their homework and they're reading. That's why.
I know there's some of us mothers in here being like, not my son. No. And he is. Okay, I would like to thank really the panelists. You guys did a superb job within the limited time.
Stand up. Stand up.
Thank you, Stengade. Thank you, Lara. Thank you. Thank you, the staff of Stengade. Tusind tak. Have a great evening. Thanks for coming. Stay in touch.
My head real fast, and I'll be right there looking at you. Right there looking at you, babe. I think you're so sexy. I'm thinking that you're so sexy. Yeah, I wanna taste it. You know that I wanna taste it. My head real fast.
Fendi, Prada, Moschino, Dolce, Gabbana. She might dip a little, but she don't gotta have it. The way she does things, it's like magic. She's open, but she still practice some skill, some tactic. It turns me on. Sometimes I think I'm a fanatic about her. Everything that I'm seeing, it's like a blur. I never felt this way. Oh, what a nice surprise.